Well, I was working for ABC. I was head of the costume design department. And I used to do a lot of specials for them and public service programs, all sorts of different things. But I got a call one day asking me if I would like to design costumes for Dark Shadows. And I was kind of bowled over because I didn't even know they knew me at Dark Shadows. I didn't realize that anybody was familiar with my work, but evidently they were. They were doing this segment of the 1840s, and I thought, well, you know, what if we move this time segment back a few years to 1835, and which is just the most beautiful romantic era. And when I showed some, research to the production team, they said, yeah, go for it, that's fine. So that was wonderful. I'd always wanted to design a show in that time period. This was the fall of 1970, and when I came onto the show, it had been running for quite a while. Stanley Simmons had designed the set of costumes just before me, and before him, Ramsey Mostaller had done the show for a few years. And while I was designing new costumes, of course, there was the running of the show on a day-to-day basis. And finally, the sketches were done, and they were sent out to the costume houses to be bid on. And the actors were coming for fittings, and some of them were saying, why do we have to bother with this, you know? But in the long run, I think they were very happy when the clothes began to filter into the show. And they all looked, the actors looked wonderful. Of course, you know, the show was known for its beautiful faces, and they looked fabulous in the clothes. And I think a lot of excitement came about when they were getting the new costumes. And at last, the costumes could measure up to the sets, which Cy Tomashoff had done for so many years. And the sets had been built from scratch. And you see, I don't guess I mentioned this, that the show had been, the costumes had been rented for the show until the time that I came in. And they had chosen to do it that way, and they'd done a nice job, but it was not like having new designs made and fitted for each actor. So that was really what I brought to the show. And we had a good time artistically. I had noticed when I was watching the show that they did a lot of extreme close-ups. The camera work was quite interesting, but they practically never did long shots. They went right in from the waist on up. So I thought that a way we could save a little money was to have two looks for each costume. So, for instance, if a quite elaborate gown was designed for one of the characters, then it could have another little addition on the top or a different bodice that would change the look. And the skirt didn't need to be changed at all. Now, mind you, these were very expensive fabrics, so this was to be a savings. And with the men, they could change a cravat, change neckwear, a vest, even a jacket, although changing a jacket wasn't so inexpensive. But anyway, we thought of 2 or 3 versions for each basic costume, and that would give a lot of different looks to the whole visual part of it. I always gear my costume design to the character of the show, whatever show I'm working on. So if I was trying to achieve a look for Lara playing, I can't remember the name of the character, it's been a while, you know. But it would be, I might use the same silhouette for her throughout the show. the fabrics and the design of the details and so forth would be different, but she might have one silhouette that would follow throughout, and that really applied for all of the characters, and I wanted them to have the feel of being able to easily flow from one scene to the next. There was one red velvet costume that Joan Bennett wore that I thought looked wonderful on her, and I was very happy about that. I loved Jonathan. I loved Nancy Barrett's. There was a kind of golden costume with a wonderful cape that went over it and a bonnet. Oh, she looked so marvelous in that bonnet. And oh, I thought David Selby looked so handsome in his clothes. The clothes of this period are a great favorite of mine, both the men and the women. So I had really a good time designing them. And we had excellent people in the workroom to do the tailoring and do the draping. And we were able to do very nice detail work. They had wonderful embroiderers doing marvelous work on all the lace and the neckwear, and it was really a very interesting thing to do. And I enjoyed the different characters. I loved doing the work for Laura playing Catherine. I loved working with Joan Bennett. She was just marvelous. Nancy Barrett was great fun and just looked so adorable in everything. It was just a pleasure to design clothes for her. But that really applied to a great many, most of the cast. We really did have a good time getting it together. And it was very satisfying when it finally did get on camera, and I could see that they were excited after all their fittings that they had these new clothes that have been made especially for them. And that's a nice feeling. Although the show had always looked well with the rental costumes, to have, for an actor to have clothes made just specifically for him or her is a very nice thing. And this was a big treat after, I think the show had been running 3 or 4 years by that time. So this was a kind of a little bonus treat. I guess we did send the show out in style. It was really a shame that having gone through all of that work and all of that expense and so forth, that the show didn't last. And I think that nobody in either the cast or the crew believed that it really was going to happen. I think everybody was waiting for this magical reprieve that never came, because there it went. The final days were very interesting, but they were kind of sad because everyone was hoping that it would go on, but of course it didn't. And but I'm glad that I'm very glad that I was part of it. I would just what can I say? It surprised me too, because the show's ratings were not that bad. And I think that I, like everybody else, thought it was going to continue, but it didn't. I remember there was a fantastic farewell party on top of the coffins in the studio. That was kind of amusing. Well, I think that that design and fine art are very closely related. It's all part of the artistic field. And anything that a visual artist does in the way of work is going to be contributory to what follows. And now that have been doing paintings for a number of years and really have not designed costumes now for many years, I attribute a great deal of my really of my attitude towards work from the days of designing costumes, whether it was Dark Shadows or a Broadway show or whatever. But it was it's all related, and it just hopefully an artist just keeps growing in another direction.